Daniel, to you, from a leadership perspective, from leadership lens, what differentiates an average engineer from someone who is ready to work on, AI-driven systems?
This is a very good question because this makes or breaks if you get a job or not in the interview. So before I even answer the question, I think people can raise hands, right? I'd love to see how many people on the call have tried to use AI to write some code. If we can just quickly see how many of the people in the room have tried to write some code with AI. I think there's a lot of thumbs up, so I can assume quite a few people, right? And the interesting thing is, every single person can agree with me that the first code AI generated for you didn't work. It never works first time, right? And most of the reason why it doesn't work is like, and if you have said, as Toby has said, is it lacks context, right? And I think AI ready engineers in 2026 and beyond are people who think, like I said in my first response, think in systems. They think trade-offs, they think risks, they think, okay, if I implement this now, what impact would it have in 3 years' time for the business? Because that's when you're thinking not projects or app-based, you're thinking enterprise-based. Because everything you build for any big enterprise, for any company, even if it's a small, medium business, it's in mind for what else can the business do afterwards. So I think what really differentiates average engineer to one who's ready to thrive in the AI era is the one who thinks systems, the one who understands problem solving. This is the analogy I always give, right? Coding is like learning how to use a particular tool. However, beyond knowing how to use that specific tool, what do you do when you're put in a position where you have no clue what this tool is? You've never seen this programming language before. You don't know any of the technology tools that you've been asked to deliver this in. What do? It's like Lego. You know how to put the pieces together. The same way you can build Shrek in Lego, the same brain is the same brain that can build Star Trek flight spacecraft in Lego, right? You need to learn the fundamentals, and the fundamentals are problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. This is what a lot of people lack in this day. They think, oh yeah, let me just learn how to code in Python and let me call some LLM through some API, something like that. But beyond that, you're not thinking about observability. So when I finally release my AI in the world, in production, how do I monitor its performance? How can I, based on the performance, improve it over time? That's where stuff like continuous improvement, continuous delivery, these core DevOps platform principles and frameworks come into play, even in the AI world, right? And there's people who understand this that are ready to deploy AI production ready, right? There's many things like data quality, model limitations. There's so many models out there, open source models, proprietary models, Claude, GPT, Grok, and they all have specialisms. What you use for one thing may not be what you use for another thing, right? And even understanding that trade-off is what sets an AI-ready engineer apart from an average engineer, right? You have to think about cost implications. Some of these better models, right? Let's say you go into a business, I think, and if you've mentioned he's had consultancy background, Toby also consultancy. I also used to work in a consultancy. So one of the key things about that I think working in a consultancy builds for you is the ability to think about the customer. What does your client actually want, right? And if you can't think about what they want and what's the best way to implement it, you will often just come up with some slop, some AI code slop, and it won't deliver much. Maybe even stuff like performance optimization. You might build something, it's great, but it takes about 3 seconds to respond. But the people who need to get the information that they're getting from your system need it in milliseconds. But because you don't understand systems and who the actual person you're building for is, you end up building something that kind of works, but it doesn't really fulfill the criteria of the end user, right? So I think I often put it in this simple question. An average engineer asks, does it work, right? It works, it does the job, yay. But a strong engineer says, okay, what actually will happen when it fails? What's the user experience when it fails? What's the user experience when, or how does this perform when maybe it's like, for example, you work at Amazon, right? And you're building something and we know Black Friday, huge amount of traffic. Have I planned ahead of this? This is a very good engineer because they're thinking scalability, they're thinking in the worst possible scenario rather than just, happy path and stuff like that. So I think, to put it simply, thinking system, thinking enterprise-wise, thinking how can this actually impact the business in the most obscure scenarios that are not very common. That's what sets a amazing engineer apart from a very average engineer.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I think there's a further question. The further question to this, I know a lot of people who are on this call are probably, looking forward to, getting new roles in AI engineering or so. Let's say, they apply for a job and they get to land an interview. Like, how would you advise that they go into the room with this mindset to show that they are not average engineers?
Yeah.
Like, what would be advice? Yeah.
Yeah. I think my advice would be come up with some scenarios. So I think what really helps me in my development is because of those core fundamental skills I mentioned about problem solving, critical thinking, creativity. I've always looked to solve problems around me, even if it's the slightest problem. I will forever give this example to even 30 years time, because it shows the kind of mindset it takes to be a different engineer, right? So when I was studying at uni, most people, they like to study music. I'm one of those people. I love listening to music while studying and doing stuff. However, such a simple pain point as if I'm listening to Spotify radio and I like the song I'm hearing, I have to briefly stop my study, open my phone, go to Spotify, like the song or put it in a particular playlist, then go back and study. That brief, maybe it seems like 30 seconds of context switching can completely derail your study, right? And I was thinking, how can I fix this problem? Because it's annoying. I want to listen to my music and I want to study in peace. So I said, you know what? I'll build an Alexa bot that when I hear a song I like, I'll just say, hey, Alexa, I like this song. And it does the job. Instead of 30 seconds, that's 2 seconds. So that mindset of I have a problem, how do I solve the problem? So often find problems in your own personal life, because it doesn't have to be the next big startup idea. Maybe it's something so simple that happens in your local community, happens in your school, happens in your uni that is a pain point for everyone. Start with solving that problem. The more you build a habit of solving problems and going through, okay, I have a problem statement. These are the potential requirements. How do I marry that up to a solution that is useful for people? That's why I say going through that process over and over and over again will help you build this kind of mindset when going into interviews. But
yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so this one's for you, Flora. So what's one invisible challenge women face in AI engineering that isn't talked about enough?
Okay, so I'm going to speak from my own point of view on this. So one challenge I have faced personally, and which I have also heard the same from colleagues of mine, is being underrated for the task. So, the title engineering is not usually from this part of the country, Nigeria, this part of the world, Nigeria. Most of the time, engineers are usually seen to be male and not usually female. So, when I introduce myself as an AI engineer, most people begin to wonder if I'm up to the task. So there was this scenario, something happened. I was trying to refer a friend of mine to a place I used to work. So they were looking for an AI engineer. And this person was actually a colleague of mine. It was like, oh, he needs an AI engineer in his department to work with. Then I said, oh, I have a friend I can introduce to you who can take up the job. Then the first thing he said was, oh, I should make sure it's a male, not a female. And I was like, why? So he said he actually wouldn't mind a female for a different role, but because it's AI engineering and it's not a role he understands, because he's more of like a business person. So it's not something he understands himself. So he said he can't work with a female because of that. And he admitted that it's actually a bias. So I was like, oh, so it's a bias and you still think this way. Then it was like, oh, yeah, it wouldn't, like, it prefers to understand a topic more than a female and wouldn't like to work with a female based on a topic he doesn't really understand. If it's like a business role or something he understands personally, he wouldn't mind working with a female. And I was like, oh, but you have no problem working with a male on this same thing. Like, the male AI engineer knows it more than you. You don't have a problem with that. And it was like, yeah, that knows that it's biased. And I was like, okay, so this means I don't know what might have transpired in other places that I may have been looking for opportunity. But I was like, if someone actually think this way, and this is an educated person, this is someone who is like in a top position in an organization. So how many more doors are being closed to females who are also AI engineers, or may not even be AI engineers, but are like in roles that seem to be male centered? So I think this is actually a problem which I think should be fixed in a way based on I don't know if it's education that fixed this, but I don't believe in a role being designated based on gender. I feel like if you want to employ someone, you should go for who is the most skilled. Like if I were to employ someone, I wouldn't even employ you based on, oh, you are a female like myself. I'll employ you based on, can you do the job? Like I give you a fair assessment and whoever does the job better. So not based on bias. So I think this is one prevalent issue. Females who may want to come into the field of AI engineering with this. So like I said, it may not be something that is prevalent all over the world, but this part of the world where I am, where I currently work, I think this is an issue there. And when I go look at the workforce, like the ratio of female AI engineers that I see, they actually feel like, I mean, those who are actively working in the field, not even those who are like trying to get into the field, like those who are actively working into the field, I see that it's actually a small number, and which may even be much more smaller because of this bias that people might have. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that experience. Yeah, I don't know what to say, but it's really sad to see that people are okay having a fellow male knowing more than them versus females. That's but I hope that stops very soon. So